Welcome to Learning Hub GH. If you are new to the channel, you make sure you subscribe to the channel and also you click on that notification bell so that you'll be updated whenever we upload a new video. Today we are going to look at classification of costs. Classification of costs. So classification of costs is defined as the process of grouping costs under a common characteristics. So classification of costs simply has to do with the grouping of costs under a common characteristic. So costs are classified into the following. So 1. Nature. Classification of costs by nature looks at the elements of cost. So the classification of costs by nature looks at the elements of cost. So costs may be classified into material, labor, and expenses. So under nature, costs can be classified into material, labor, and expenses. Material is further classified into direct material and indirect material. Labor is also further classified into direct labor and indirect labor. Also, expenses is further classified into direct expenses and indirect expenses. So the second one is function. This deals with costs incurred by a department or function of the organization. So it deals with costs incurred by a department or function of the organization. So we can have examples to be administration costs, production costs, selling and distribution costs, and etc. So the next one I'm going to look at is control. So cost classification by control means the extent to which a member of an undertaking can influence cost. So cost by classification simply means the extent to which a member of an undertaking can influence cost. Costs can be influenced by members of an undertaking are called controllable costs. So costs that can be influenced by the members of an undertaking are referred to as controllable costs. On the other hand, examples of controllable costs, so we have cost of raw material is an example of controllable cost. And on the other hand, costs that cannot be influenced by members of an undertaking are known as uncontrollable costs. So uncontrollable costs cannot be influenced by the actions of a member of an undertaking. So examples include management salaries. 4. Behavior. With behavior, costs are classified according to how they behave with output, cost, or sales. So behavior looks at how cost is classified according to output, cost, or sales. Costs are therefore classified according to whether they change directly with output, cost, or sales, or they do not. Costs that change with output, cost, or sales are known as variable costs. Examples include direct wages, and costs that do not change with output, cost, or sales are called fixed costs. Examples include rent and rates. So I'll take it once again. Costs that change with output, cost, or sales are known as variable costs. An example of those are direct wages. And costs that do not change with output, cost, or sales are known as fixed costs. An example of those are rent and rates. Costs that are partly fixed and partly variable are known as semi-variable costs. So when we have a cost that is partly fixed and partly variable, it is known as semi-variable costs. An example is electricity. 5. Production. So with this, costs are classified into production costs and non-production costs. So production costs are classified into production costs and non-production costs. Production costs are costs associated with the manufacturing of an organization's product. So costs incurred that is associated with the manufacturing of an organization's product is known as production costs. Non-production costs are costs associated with the transfer of the product from the factory to the customer. So costs that are associated with the transfer of the product from the factory to the customer, they are non-production costs. An example can be carriage outwards. 6. Time. When time costs are with time, costs are classified into historical costs and predetermined costs. So with time, costs are classified into historical costs and predetermined costs. And someone may ask, what are historical costs and predetermined costs? Historical cost is a cost that has been actually incurred. It is also known as actual cost. And predetermined cost is a cost estimated in advance of production of which it relates. So the predetermined cost is a cost estimated in advance of production of which it relates. So this is the end of the lesson. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you get updated whenever we upload a new video. Thank you for watching.